Okay, well, welcome back to another Math Minute with Mr. Thomas. Today what we're going to talk about is some inequalities. So just to help you out with some inequalities here, I know some of us struggle with which way to shade and things like that. So again, the rule of thumb here is that anytime you have inequality, so greater than, less than, or any version of that, that you're going to be doing some sort of shading. So it's just a recap on that concept that if you have any of these symbols within your problem, there will be shading involved. Okay, so there will be shading, whether it's on a number line or whether it's on an XY axis. So in this case, we have a y equals x, or y is greater than x, which therefore, since there's two variables, it's going to be on an XY axis. So the first thing that you should have picked up is that we really need to look at this as what is y equals x. Now, if you're looking slope-intercept form, this is y equals mx plus b, where b is 0. So we're crossing through the origin in this case as we would go through. So if we said, hey, we're crossing at the origin, our slope's going up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1, and so forth and so on, to the point where we would have a line that looks something like this. Okay, so now, again, I'm not really using proper intervals here, but if I were, you would see that this is going up 1 over 1 all the way through. On your graph paper, you should see that how that works. So that's the part that probably a lot of you struggle with, is just graphing that line. The second part here would be actually to now come up with the concept of the shading part. So as we would go through, we would now shade this, and well, let me take that back. We would need to definitely put in some sort of dashed line, because we are talking about this being just less than. There's no solid line. So remember, solid line means solid line for yours. So that's another rule of thumb, that solid line means solid line for your graph. Ours should be dotted, dashed, however you want to refer to it. But now the shading part. So it says y is greater than x, which means you want the y values that are larger than this x value, which is fairly easy to pick up if you think about what your y values are. Now as I go this way on the x-axis, or on the y-axis, I'm getting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, I'm getting larger and larger y values. Down here, I'm getting like -1, -2, -3. So what's happening down here is I'm getting smaller numbers. So the question is, where are my numbers that are larger than this line? Well, they're above this. They're above this line up here where it's 5 and things like that. So it actually tells us that we're going to shade this area of the graph, the stuff above. So if it's y is greater, you shade up. That's kind of the rule of thumb. So y is greater than, we shade up. So sometimes that helps to think about it in that sense. Some people don't catch that early enough. Now the more your line gets to be more vertical, it gets tougher. So that's where you have to think about where my y value is larger. So y is 5, that's much larger than -3. So that's kind of the idea. So what about y is less than x? So again, using that same line, so I'm going to kind of cheat this since we already know what it is. We looked at it before. It's dotted, it's going through the origin. So it's the exact same example I just used in the last problem. Just there we go, that's what we have. So now the question is, well, where are we going to shade in this case? Well, it's y is less than x this time. So again, we said the larger values were up here. So then the negative numbers are below. So if it's y is less than, we want the numbers less than that, so the y values that are below it, which means we're going to shade downwards below. So y is less than, shade down. That's kind of the rule of thumb on that one. Now you can really only make this assumption when it's y is less than or y is greater than. If it's y plus x, now you got to pick a test point, which we talked about in that section. So let's look at this one. If it was y is now greater than -2x plus 3, And just for the sake of, let's go ahead and make this or equal to, so we'll see a solid line. So now we would say go up 3 units, 1, 2, 3 units. We plot our first point right there. Go down 2, over 1, down 1, 2, over 1, put us right there, making our line solid and downward. But now we want to figure out, well, which way are we going to shade? Well, it's y is greater than. Now this one's kind of tough because right there's our line. It's starting to get a little more vertical. But still, up here is where we're going to see like numbers like 10, 100, 1,000, whatever it's going to be. And then down here we're seeing like negative 15. So which values are larger than that line? Well, definitely up here, which means we're going to shade this way. So just graphing inequality, that's the process that you would be using, is which way to shade. So keep that in mind as you go through. And we'll do one more here as we go through. Same concept. Just going -1, so downward 1. There would be our first point. And we go up 1, over 1, up 1, over 1. And we would see our line going through here. Well, that was kind of off. There we go. A little better. That's where our line would go through. Again, kind of sake of this, let's say it was greater than or equal to, so that would create this solid line going through here. And the big part that we're kind of questioning, which way do we shade? Well, it's y values that are less than that. So in this case, we would be shading downward. Okay, so shading downward in that case. Alright, so this is just a real quick kind of overview of what we talked about, of how to shade up or down. Again, if you get stuck, always pick the test point. Okay, something that's not on the line, but you could pick like 0, 0 for a lot of cases. Unless your y-intercept is 0, then I wouldn't pick that. Okay, if you're still struggling, let me know. I'll try to help you out.